Now, there are multiple interpretations as to how the 100 Flowers campaign unfolded the way it did and why it was stopped in the way it was stopped. One interpretation, and a rather obvious one from a distance, is that the party used this opportunity to encourage people to speak out only in order to quash them, to find out who was truly loyal and who was not. Certainly there were many who believed this. Another interpretation is that the party was actually surprised at how unpopular it still was, and profoundly unpopular it was among China's most educated people. A third, certainly plausible interpretation is that Mao Zedong got part of what he wished from this campaign, a strong critique of certain types of activities and certain types of behavior in the party leadership, and used that to bludgeon the party leadership into following his policies in the course of the second five-year plan, while at the same time using the opportunity to suppress those who had truly gone, in his view, too far. And certainly much of what was said in this campaign went far beyond what Mao would have envisaged, even though, again, he may have succeeded in his aim of putting a scare into the party bureaucracy. Party leadership would indeed now go along with his own unique development plans, but in the meantime, he would cooperate wholeheartedly in dealing with those who had revealed themselves to be unrepentant, to be counter-revolutionaries, to be poisonous weeds during the 100 Flowers. If anything, Mao may have hoped for what you might think of as a loyal remonstrance in the tradition of imperial scholar officials, which he could use to undermine bureaucratic caution at the top. He may not have expected, and he certainly would not countenance, loyal opposition of a Western sort, and still less the apparently open hostility to the regime that manifested itself across this campaign. This intense campaign of criticism took only 5 weeks, and then it was stopped suddenly. The response on the part of the regime was a tough anti-rightist campaign that carried forward some of the anti-bureaucratic elements of the 100 Flowers movement, while directing its primary attention at those who left themselves open to attack during the period of blooming and contending. These erstwhile critics were forced to condemn themselves and to condemn one another. Great numbers of people, hundreds of thousands, were sent down to the countryside to put them in direct contact with the masses who are themselves about to be roused in another huge campaign of Mao's design, a campaign that was consciously anti-intellectual and anti-expert, the Great Leap Forward. We will talk about the Great Leap Forward at another time. But in closing now, let's pick up the story of our lonely individual who bloomed and contended in 1957. Here is our friend, once again as recorded by Bernard Frolick in his book, Mao's People. It happened like this. Secretary Lin had been spearheading the attack when a small item appeared in the press warning about, quote, those who cover up their own errors while attacking others. A few days later, a poster appeared at the school, quote, all party members must undergo self-criticism. It is not enough to criticize others. Then there were more, and they were more specific. Lin himself was accused of being, quote, a fox who could no longer hide his tail, end quote, a white-eyed wolf, and a cat who weeps over the death of a rat. That is to say, somebody who doesn't say what they mean. Give sly old Lin credit for his cunning. As soon as he saw what was happening, he changed course and began to admit all of his mistakes. This saved his neck because somehow he managed to deflect the attack on himself onto others. I was one of them. Lin admitted that he had made mistakes and he had not criticized himself for his own arrogance and his failings. But no one had knocked him down for what he had said about the party cadres. He wriggled off the hook without suffering a damning blow to his career. But others like myself were not so lucky. If the big fish get away, then you settle for shrimp. And so it was with me. The old Chinese proverb, beat the mule to terrify the horse, fit my case perfectly. Old Lin jumped to the attack, and suddenly there was earnest talk about rightists who presumed to destroy the party by their words and deeds. Who would be the next target? I wondered, and there I was, walking along the corridors, when I saw my name on the wall, along with that of 4 others, accused of being secret revolutionaries in their hearts and deeds, stinking fish who must not be allowed to pollute our school anymore. It was like a stab of ice in my heart. How could it be? Why me? What had I done? The answers came swiftly enough at a general meeting in which I had to stand at attention and hear my girlfriend, in a clear, confident voice, tell the whole school how I had secretly opposed the party and tried to enlist her cooperation in this effort. She said that I had spoken maliciously of specific individuals, including Secretary Lin, and I was plotting to restore the old pre-communist government. She said that at first she thought she could persuade me to come forward and admit my mistakes, but now she realized that I was too dangerous, and I had to be exposed. She looked straight ahead while reciting these lies. Her accusation, together with Lin's testimony that I was a secret rightist, sealed my fate. I wrote a self-criticism that took weeks to finish, and then they sent me to Hulin, an isolated farm for cadres in the Northeast, 100 miles from the Soviet border. There must have been 1,000 of us there. Conditions were primitive, the work harsh. We spent most of our time in the forests planting, tending, and cutting trees. It was tough work, and when we weren't on the job, we were in political studies sessions. All of us were being re-educated, and some had been at Hulin from before the 100 Flowers campaign. What a group we were. Some had been high-level cadres in Beijing, many were party members, all had stumbled and fallen at a critical time in their careers. All of us felt the injustice of what happened and our own powerlessness in the face of party policy. They sent me eventually to a suburban farm belonging to the Central Officer Cadre Schools, where I labored for 3 more years, until they finally took off my rightist hat, my rightist label, in late 1962. Now I no longer had to perform manual labor, and I was sent to Beijing, where I was reinstated as a cadre in the Central Office's Cadre School. They let me do administrative work, but did not allow me to teach. Although I had worn my rightist hat for 5 years, I was considered by most to be a pretty good guy. The work was routine, and I had a decent income, but I knew that my dreams of being at the top had been permanently shattered. I had made it to Beijing, but I was branded a political misfit. I would never be trusted with a responsible position. I was luckier than some, however. Of the 5 of us who had been sent for re-education, 2 had committed suicide. 1 had been sent with his entire family to the Northwest. I didn't know where the other 2 were, but it's clear they never got back their old jobs. Old Lin had died, apparently without suffering from his two-faced behavior. My ex-girlfriend was in Nanjing, married to a cadre with a safe class background. I hope for his sake he keeps his mouth shut when she's around.